Hey, shalom, my homies. I wanted to jump online and do a special edition video today. Of course, it's just after Christmas, so I'm wearing my green and red. All right, it's not. I just thought it looked cool, but I want to do a video just to kind of talk about what about Christmas as a believer, a messianic believer myself, and I was thinking about how do I approach this, and then Bill Cloud from Jacob's Tent. He's in Tennessee. Amazing guy, been in the walk doing this for 40, 50 years now. Bill had did a video, and so I thought he says everything I wished I could say. Only he's way more intelligent, way more articulate, and just did it brilliantly. So what I'd like to do is take a minute. I'd like to play this video and play it for you, so you could see and hear what Bill Cloud says about the subject, about Christmas as far as believers go, and what he said really sums up what I believe about celebrating Christmas or not celebrating Christmas. And this is Bill Cloud. It's a video he did just a few days ago on why his congregation celebrates Christmas and why they don't or do not. And I thought it was just a great, healthy perspective on the whole process. So let me cue it up here real quick and get it going.
Well, it's that time of year. It's that time of year when everybody's asking, Bill,
oh, wait, I haven't set it in high speed.
What do we do when our family asks us to come over to eat Christmas dinner with them? What do we do? Well, in this vid rush, we're going to talk about those things. Hello, everybody. This is the first of what we hope to be many of our sessions. We're calling it vid rush, where we address questions that come in to Jacob's Tent via email and letters and all those kinds of things. And in this initial session, we're going to respond to a question that we get from just a whole lot of people, and throughout the year, I should add. And that is whether or not we should observe or celebrate Christmas. I'm going to say up front that I realize this is a very important issue for a lot of people. And if not just for their immediate family, it's certainly important for the sake of relationships with their extended family and their friends. I will say that this is not going to be a teaching about the origins of Christmas or an expose on the practices that are associated with observing Christmas. I mean, anybody can do that. You can study it yourself. You can come to your own conclusion about the matter. But this is to answer the specific question. Should we observe, should we celebrate Christmas as others do? Which I will suggest, in regard to customs and practices, is distinguished from acknowledging the birth of the Messiah. And so that you'll understand where I'm coming from, we'll start with this. My family does not celebrate Christmas. Jacob's Tent does not celebrate Christmas as a congregation. As a matter of fact, this year that we're taping this, December 25th, coincides with the first night of Hanukkah. And our congregation is going to be observing the Feast of Dedication, or Hanukkah. So you're never going to hear me say that I'm in favor of decorating trees with tinsel or standing under the mistletoe or telling children that Santa Claus is coming to town. But on the other hand, my family doesn't disparage those who do. If I'm out and someone says, Merry Christmas, I don't say bah humbug, or I don't observe pagan rituals such as that. If somebody says that to me, I just simply say, thank you. Just the other day, a bank teller asked me if I'd gotten all of my Christmas shopping done. So I replied, I finished that a long time ago. I just didn't bother to tell her that a long time ago meant almost 30 years ago. My point is this. I personally don't spend time and energy attacking the trappings of Christmas or those who still observe this day. And the same is true when it comes to teaching the congregation. I don't dedicate messages to why we don't do Christmas. And at this time of year, the subject comes up. Nevertheless, we simply go on with what we normally do, understanding, that the rest of the world is busy preparing for what is, for a lot of people, the highlight of their year. And I think it's important to remember that most of us, anyway, not all, but most of us, used to celebrate Christmas, not to mention a lot of other questionable holidays. And I'm certainly glad that the Father was patient with us. So in turn, I think when it comes to these matters, we should strive to be patient with others as well. More importantly, I'm of the view that more than pointing out what people shouldn't do, we should be living in a way that draws attention to what we should do and what we get to do, and consequently, experiencing the blessing that goes along with that. Frankly, folks, if all we have is, or if all we ever do is harp on the evils of Christmas and Easter and eating pork, things that I don't do, but if all we're doing is just talking about those kinds of things, then I would suggest that we really haven't matured nearly as much as we should. In other words, there is so much more to our way of life than just identifying what's wrong with other people's lives. And on that note, whether the issue is holidays or food or whatever, I'm not going to tell anyone what they should do or how they should do it. That's not really my job. My job is to share the good news with others and to walk out God's instructions as best I know how, as He gives me the wisdom to do it. My job, our job, is to present an example, hopefully a good example, of what God is calling us to be and what God is calling us to do. It's left to the individual to walk out their own salvation with fear and trembling. So as the head of my home and as the shepherd of this congregation, the only time I'm going to interject my positions and my thoughts, my beliefs, and my standards into what someone else is choosing to do at home is when what they do at home starts posing a threat or having a negative influence in my home or in the congregation. And so again, I want everyone to better understand where I'm coming from on this issue as a person, as an individual, and yes, by extension, as a pastor. Now, getting back to the question of whether we should observe Christmas. Years ago, actually decades ago now, and for a lot of different reasons, our family decided to stop observing Christmas as a holiday. We don't put up trees. We don't put up holly wreaths and all those kinds of things. We don't tell the grandkids that Santa Claus is flying around in a sleigh bringing presents to everyone not on his naughty list. Now, at the risk of inciting some, there are some traditions that are associated with Christmas that I don't object to. Specifically, there are songs that celebrate the birth of the Messiah, songs categorized as Christmas songs, but songs I really enjoy. In fact, from time to time at Jacob's Tent, usually during Sukkot, we'll sing some of these songs. For example, the song that contains the refrain, "Come, let us adore Him." I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Here's another tradition that I don't really take issue with: having a meal with family. In fact, over the years, I've had, I don't know how many people who don't observe Christmas ask me if it was wrong for them to go to their parents' house or to their children's house or to their in-laws' house in order to break bread with them. And I've always told them that, because this is how I believe. If it were me, depending on the situation and depending on what would be expected of me, I would probably go. I wouldn't participate in all the other trappings like gift exchanges and all those kinds of things. But for the sake of relationship, something the Messiah always placed a premium on, I would go, I would share a meal with them with this caveat. I would avoid the Christmas ham and I'd go for the turkey. I realize that there are some people who are watching this who are going to adamantly disagree with me on this issue, but on that part of it, you'll just have to disagree. As far as I understand, or how I understand the scripture and the ways of the Messiah, the weightier matter in this particular scenario is doing what is right, not necessarily proving that I am right. Too many unnecessary estrangements are the result, not of doing right, but because someone insisted they were right and the other was wrong. And if you want Bible to back up this position, I just want you to consider that the Messiah would sometimes associate with harlots and with tax collectors. He publicly acknowledged that he had intentions to go to Zacchaeus' house and fellowship with him. And this guy was a tax collector. Paul walked and talked among idolaters in Athens. Neither one of them condoned doing wrong. Neither compromised on the truth. They just focused on doing what was right, which included at times being a light in places that needed that light to shine. The very reason the Messiah came to the earth, initially as an infant born in Bethlehem, was to restore relationships. First, man to God and God to man, and then to restore the broken relationships within humanity. More specifically, as Paul rightly points out, Messiah was born to minister reconciliation, to bring those who are estranged from one another to the same table, in a manner of speaking. In his letter to the Ephesians, Paul noted that the reason circumcision, as he referred to them, and those regarded as uncircumcision, the reason they were presently estranged is because, generally speaking, both think they're right. Messiah came to do what is right, and then being able to present both circumcision and uncircumcision as one body to the Father. So let me tell you a personal story to kind of make this point. It's been about 30 years ago, and I was convinced that it was wrong to celebrate Christmas. And so one day I came home, I told Beth that from this point forward, we're no longer going to celebrate Christmas. She didn't take it very well, quite honestly, and rightfully so, because she wasn't where I was at that point. I may have been right in my conclusion, but I was terribly wrong in my execution. I wasn't leading my family in this issue. I was leaving my family behind to play catch up if they could or if they wanted to. Because, for Beth, Christmas was the one time of year that her family, when she was growing up, actually got along. And I'm not going to go into the details of that. But some of Beth's younger years weren't happy ones, at least not in a familial setting. And so a lot of her warm fuzzies as a young person were connected to Christmas. And I just didn't really appreciate that. It wasn't that she was sold on all of the decorations and the trappings. It was that she longed for the closeness of family that, at least in her experience, Christmas provided. And so, by the way, I should point out that many, many, many years ago, Beth determined to find out on her own whether or not Christmas was something that we should honor. And she studied, she prayed, and she came to the conclusion that I did. And so then as a family, we didn't celebrate Christmas anymore. We didn't acknowledge that particular day as being sacred. Now, initially, it created a little bit of a pushback from some family, not all. And the pushback we got wasn't really enough to create a chasm in our relationships. In fact, we worked very hard to make certain that it would not. And so then my point is, if we're not careful, our zeal for something can provoke us to be completely wrong in how we go about trying to do right. And so I think we need to strive to avoid that kind of a situation. Remember, there are a lot of good and decent people who genuinely love God, who still celebrate Christmas, and we should keep that in mind, even though we may strongly disagree. In short, we need to be those who bring light to others. We need to be those who are a light to others, not a blight to others. And many of these truly good folks are just as convinced that Christmas marks the birth of Messiah as you and I are that it does not. Well, Bill, don't they know that the origins of Christmas are steeped in the pagan festival of Saturnalia? Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe not. Well, but then there's the argument on the other side that some present that says Saturnalia was not as widely celebrated as we imagine until the 2nd and 3rd century AD. In other words, long after some early Christians landed on December 25th as the birth of the Messiah. Now, I want to be very clear about this. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not promoting that argument. I have issues with it, frankly. However, I am trying to point out that for every argument against the celebration of Christmas, someone can offer a rebuttal with their reasons why they should celebrate Christmas. In other words, this has been and it will continue to be a contentious issue, one of many if we stop and think about it. But instead of arguing with family and friends, I choose to do what I believe to be right in the hopes that it will provoke interest, it might lead to meaningful conversation, and hopefully it'll promote relationships, better relationships. But Bill, there is nowhere in Scripture that we are commanded to celebrate the Messiah's birth, and that is absolutely true. But for that matter, Scripture doesn't command us to celebrate Hanukkah or Purim. And frankly, there are people who get their nose out of joint that some of us do observe those things. But while there is no command to celebrate Yeshua's birth, there is a fair amount of scripture dedicated to the events leading up to his birth and the events that occurred when he was born. So obviously, it was considered important for us to know these things. And I believe primarily because his birth was the fulfillment of prophecy. God was specifically announcing to the world that he kept his promise to bring the seed of the woman into the world, the one who would destroy the works of the devil and reconcile man to God. That's why when Simeon and Anna saw the infant child in the temple, remember, they rejoiced. They celebrated. They celebrated the fact that he was here. They acknowledged that his birth would initiate events that did eventually lead to the spreading of the good news by which you and I have now come into the knowledge of the God of Israel. And in my book, that's something to be celebrated. Now, on that note, I personally believe that Sukkot is the time of the year Messiah came into the world, which is all the more reason to observe this and all the other appointed times. And for the record, if Yeshua was born during Sukkot, and I believe he was, then it's possible that Mary may, I want to underscore that word, may have conceived during Hanukkah, which is typically in December. At the end of the day, when he was born is not nearly as important as the fact that he was born, or shall I say, he came into the world, and he came into the world to save his people, including me and including you. And for that, I'm grateful. Not only that, if people are more inclined to hear that message at this time of year, why wouldn't we be more inclined to share the good news? Share what we understand, and in love and with patience. Why wouldn't we be committed to doing that, as opposed to be those who go out and point out everything that they're doing is wrong? Think of it this way. Paul used the Athenians' desire to acknowledge the unknown God as an opportunity to introduce them to the one true God, the God of Israel. And his encounter with them wasn't one in which he felt compelled to point out how and why they were wrong. Instead, he pointed them to the one who's the author of right and wrong. Now, is there a time and a place to point out people's errors? Yes, there is. But only after we've removed the log from our eye. And sometimes that log is religious arrogance, plain and simple. So then, to be clear, there will be no evergreen trees decorated with tinsel in our house. There will be no mistletoe or mountains of gift wrapping strewn throughout the living room, although there may be some eggnog. Also, I'm not going to encourage others to do these things, in part because of the connections that some of these customs have to questionable practices, and that's being rather conservative. But if I feel strongly that I should not, then why would I encourage someone else to do those things? But at the same time, I'm not going to discourage people who desire to do it. That's not my job. I'm not going to disparage people who are still in a place I once was. I will not condemn someone for something when God is well able to bring them to the place he wants them to be, because that's what he did for me, and that's what he did for you. And so given the opportunity, I want to be a positive influence, not a nagging reminder of why I'm right and you're wrong. I want to be an inspiration to others in every season, not just this one. And in every way I know how to provoke people to draw closer to our Father and to foster reconciliation where it's possible, and sometimes it's not. Finally, I want to be a reminder that we should be thankful that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And consequently, you and I have access to the Holy One of Israel. And we have the promise of life eternal in his presence. And for that, I will be thankful on December 25th, December 26th, the 27th, January, February, March, on and on. You get the picture. So there's my response. Remember, keep your comments and your interaction civil, respectful, and befitting those who are followers of the Messiah.
That is super cool. I love Bill. If you haven't followed his ministry online, you need to do so. It's Jacob's Tent. They're in Tennessee, and he's been doing this a very long time. And so I would highly encourage you to follow that. And he expressed in words that things I've only been able to think, and so that was really, really helpful to me on a personal level. So I'd like to encourage you to consider that. And this is our first year of not celebrating Christmas, my wife and I, and we've chosen to celebrate Hanukkah in place of that. And we're not anti-Christmas, nor are we going to try to foster a hostile atmosphere. If someone wants to talk and discuss what I think about the certain traditions and ideas of Christmas, I'm happy to do that as well. But I think Bill said everything very, very well in that process. So I'd like to ask for your insights, your opinions, your thoughts. Give us a post. If you like that video, then forward it to your friends and family. We do this on Facebook, on YouTube, and I'm going to try to find a way to repost it on TikTok. It's good stuff. So have a blessed day, my friends. And tonight we're going to have our Erev Shabbat service here at our house. We have several people coming to join us. And then we have our normal Shabbat service tomorrow morning at 9:30 here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at Springs Community Church is where we meet. Springs of Living Water is the name of our church. And then Sunday night, we're going to go to the synagogue with Rabbi Boaz Vituk. He is a Chabad rabbi here in Colorado Springs. He's a good friend of mine, and he invited our congregation to come join him. So I'm going to try to record some of it, if not all of it, and post it online just for the fascinating opportunity to be a part of that. And they do not believe in Jesus, Yeshua. He asked me to kind of keep our opinions to ourselves in their congregation, and I respect that. So we're not there to proselytize or anything else. We're just there to observe and learn and grow and learn some things maybe we've never been exposed to before. So I think that's really cool. So keep us in your prayers, my friends. Winter is always difficult on many levels. And if you want to contribute to the ministry, look us up at springsoflivingwater.co, and there is a give button there. You can give to the ministry to help support this. The more opportunity I have to support myself outside of ministry, then I don't have to clean carpet so much, and I can spend more time doing videos and doing teachings and spending time doing ministry with our church here and ministry online. I do a lot of things online. We are on TikTok under Digital Pastor Jim, if you'd like to look us up there. We're also on Instagram as Digital Pastor Jim 1, and I do generally a weekly podcast with my friend Julie in the jungle. It's called Welcome to the Jungle, and Carlos Ventura. And they are literally in the jungles of Mexico. And we're hoping to plan a retreat in the near future, taking a group of 10 or 15 people down there to Mexico to do some people don't like the word retreat. I like the word retreat. I want to go just retreat and relax and recharge, but sort of like a master class where we're able to sit down and talk about some of these principles in the scriptures and begin to shift our understanding more in line with what the scriptures actually teach. And so if you're interested in joining us with that, please email me or contact me through messaging. The fee will be relatively low. Airfare is going to be $400 or $500 per person round trip from wherever you're at in the United States, here in Colorado Springs, at least Denver airport, down to Mexico. It's down near, I believe, Cancun. They're on the Yucatan Peninsula is where their facility is located, and lots of really close to the beach. There's the I always want to say Sinaloa. There's the big freshwater areas you can swim and snorkel in, and lots of great things to do, and then just relax and enjoy the time together. So pray about joining us on that future trip. We're going to do it. And then, of course, when the war in Israel ends, we're going to be planning at least an annual trip to Eretz Yisrael. If you want to join me and some of our cohorts for a trip to Israel, touring the land, the Holy Land, it's going to be so much fun. There's so many amazing things for us to learn and see there. So have a blessed day. Shalom, shalom, and we'll talk to you soon.